Give us a proper introduction of who we have in the room.
Proper introduction.
Yes, introduce yourself, sir.
Well, it's funny because my introduction, like my professional introduction, includes, Linkin Park and Fort Minor and the production stuff, like the music I've made and all that. Mm-hmm. But usually when I'm just talking, like, I have kids, right? So when I talk to people that, oh, hey, what do you do? I don't give them a straight answer at all. I usually just tell them, like, I'm an artist.
You mean at, like, the PTA meetings and
stuff?
stuff?
Like something like that. Yeah. I'm an artist, or
right.
I'm a musician.
I feel like the word artist then begs, like, more questions.
It does.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I had to stop doing that a little bit.
Right. You should just be like, I'm a consultant.
Yeah, exactly.
From HYPEBEAST Radio, I'm Jeff Staple, and this is The Business of Hype, a show about creative entrepreneurs, brand builders, innovators, and the realities behind the dreams they've built.
It's not often we have a musician as a guest on The Business of Hype, but Mike Shinoda is no ordinary musician. He helped form Linkin Park, one of the most influential and successful music acts of not only our generation, but of all time. There's a rare breed of acts in music that has sold millions upon millions of records. Now, I know when numbers get that big, it's kind of hard to put things into perspective, so let me help. Aretha Franklin, 25 million records sold lifetime. Nirvana, 46 million. Tupac Shakur, 51 million. Prince, 65 million. Britney Spears, 81 million. And Linkin Park, well, they've generated over 85 million units sold worldwide, putting them neck and neck with none other than Beyoncé herself. But Mike Shinoda has managed to avoid many of the trappings that fame, success, and ridiculous amounts of money usually garners. Mike can still go to the movies. He can still walk into a deli. He can go to the grocery store. And that's all by deliberate design. In fact, Mike probably could have made a pretty decent career for himself being a designer or artist. But thanks to his millions of rabid fans around the world, he chose music. And while Mike decided on the quiet life, his bandmate, the late Chester Bennington, was a casualty of it. And Mike's new solo album, Post Traumatic, is an emotional love letter outlining how he dealt with the untimely loss of his partner. And whether you have a band or a business, many of the trials and tribulations are similar. For Mike Shinoda and Linkin Park, they're inseparable.
And we were talking before we started recording, talking about, you went to Parsons.
Yeah.
I went to Art Center. Like, I went to school for art, and it was in the more traditional sense. Like, I went for illustration and some graphic design. And that's what I thought I was going to be doing until the music thing took off.
Like, you probably could have been a working, successful artist / graphic designer.
Oh, that's for sure what I was already doing. I'd done a couple of album covers and like single covers for rappers, and it was put together. Like I pitched to like a couple of like Atlantic Records and a couple of like indie hip hop labels, and got a couple things just before we got signed ourselves to Warner Records. And they didn't know, like, they
Holy
didn't even
shit,
know.
Really?
Yeah, I did Styles of Beyond. You ever hear of the Canadian rapper Socrates?
Of course, I love Socrates.
So his 12-inch for his, like, one of his early singles, I did that. It's an image of him breaking a turntable in half with his hands.
Okay.
Its illustration was, I did
wow.
that. I did a couple other little
And
ones.
when Warner picked you up, we're getting ahead of ourselves in the interview, but when Warner picked you up, you were still thinking, like, I got to get these gigs out here. Like, I got to get these art.
It was, no, at that point, I think at that point I knew. Like, at that point it was already, we'd showcased, just to set the stage, like, I went to school, I'd always, in high school, music was always, like, in the background. I would do it for fun. I'd do it every weekend. And during the week, I was doing at least one class of art, and then after school, I would also take art because I needed to get my portfolio together to submit for college.
Yeah.
And I got into Art Center, which for people that don't know, it's kind of like the Harvard of art schools. It's like there are a handful of schools that are just really rigorous training. They're great, programs, and
it's like an inferior
expensive.
Parsons.
It's an inferior Parsons. Yeah. I mean,
it's like second-rate Parsons.
Some less educated people would say that, and I think it's funny that you do that because like the real even at art schools there are adversarial relationships. And really the Art Center, Cal Arts, maybe RISD too, like those three schools really like go at it with each other.
I feel like RISD is the one that no one can really talk shit about.
A little bit.
When someone's from RISD, I'm like, damn.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So I got into art, but I didn't apply for those schools because I actually toured. I knew I didn't want to leave California, so I didn't apply for RISD.
Right.
I toured Cal Arts and I liked it, but I applied for there, but I really wanted to get into Art Center, and I did. So I was at school there, and I was playing music on the weekends, and again, just for fun. And then the band started getting attention, started taking off. And then by the time, like probably 3 months before before I graduated, we got an offer from Warner Records, and we had showcased for every label. They had turned every single one of them had turned us down. All the indie labels had turned us down. Like everybody had seen us and didn't care. Yeah. But we had at some point in the middle of that, we had parted ways with our previous singer and found Chester. Okay. And then started doing it again. And they were more interested, but they still didn't sign us.
Was this it was called Zero, right?
Yeah, originally the band was called Zero.
With an X.
And then when we started with Chester, we renamed the band Hybrid Theory.
Okay.
The band was called Hybrid Theory.
Oh, okay.
And then when we signed with Warner, we changed the name from Hybrid Theory to Linkin Park and called the album Hybrid Theory.
So would you say Chester was instrumental in getting you guys signed? Like, was that?
It was definitely the missing piece. Like we knew that my other friend Mark, who was singing for us, who I started the band with, it was just in the beginning it was just me and Mark, and we were both artists. He ended up going to do study graphic design at Long Beach State, and he loves music and he loves. But he's more into the management side. Yeah, really is what it ended up being. So he ended up doing that. Okay. So he's a successful. People always say like, "Oh man, that sucks to be that guy." Like he wasn't the singer of Linkin Park. No, he's like a successful music manager. Like he manages a ton of great rock bands. System of a Down, Deftones. They managed Cypress Hill and all this stuff. So yeah, he's done great. Right.
Yeah. When you were rewind a little bit. When you first entered into school, like you were just going to be destined to be like a working designer / artist, right? Was musician like a distant third?
No, it was there. I mean, I was just trying to juggle it. It wasn't going to pay the bills, right? So that was the thing. Is like I knew I had to take design jobs. I was working at a design house in Glendale, which is near kind of on the north east side of Los Angeles, and they
have a good mall there. Great mall,
great Korean food, great. It's like basically all like Armenian and Korean actually out there, which is where Joe was from. Coincidentally,
oh really?
Joe's Korean.
And where you found Joe,
right? Where I found Joe. So yeah, I was. I mean,
you're just being realistic.
The graphic design was like paying the bills, so I couldn't really stop doing that, and. It also, all of these things work together. I mean, just in the context of like kind of some of the stuff that you talk about on this podcast, learning how as a freelance illustrator, graphic designer, you're running your own business. You're constantly like having to go and drum up work. And also you have to be a good collaborator. And all of those things translated. I knew from the very beginning, even as I was like. When I was in college, the band was really, really new, I knew that all those things translated to both things that I was trying to do. Yeah. Like in school, we would do these projects where you might work for 20 hours on a piece, and then you come into class and you put in 15 people would put all their work up on the wall, and you'd spend a few hours telling each other why their work is the worst thing you've ever seen and it sucks shit, and this is what's wrong with it. Right. And you have to take that. Like you have to sit there and listen to everybody else tell you why your work is a piece of shit. Totally. And figure out how to like, number one, have a thick skin about it, but number two, really like find the truth in those things. And I always found the stuff that's made me the most angry was the stuff that was right. It was like if somebody said something that was just ridiculous, like I had a thick skin about that. I was just like, Well, they don't know. They just their perspective's different than mine. Their goals are different than mine.
Right.
They're not trying to make the same thing I'm trying to make. But if somebody says something that like I couldn't understand why it bothered me so much, it was usually because there was some element of truth to what it was they were saying.
Yeah, the power of critiques.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
and that's true for a band too. Like in a collaborative, like our band was always has always been a democracy, and so listening to each other's opinions and criticisms and stuff has always been like a big. It's been one of the key components of the band.
Back in this time frame, who were like your inspirational muses?
Okay, I remember. Well, so the obvious stuff, like musically, I listened to. I had always been a big fan of Nine Inch Nails, Deftones on the rock side, those guys, and also like some more classic stuff like Jimi Hendrix and Led Zeppelin, which incidentally I got turned on to because of a lot of Rick Rubin's production. So Public Enemy, Beastie Boys, Run DMC, and then at that time the Roots were really starting to happen. So I loved the Roots. I loved a lot of the Rawkus stuff.
Yeah. I designed a lot of the Rawkus stuff.
I remember reading that. Yeah, it's so wild, man. It's so crazy. I mean, that stuff was like so. It's like so. At that time, I was just talking about this in the car because we were listening to Pharcyde. You remember the Pharcyde?
Of course.
Okay. So the Pharcyde came out. It was a rap group from LA, and like it was very like the vibe that I always got from them was like it was like Tagger, Skater, like almost like backpack rap.
Yeah.
Like they were playing live. There was live music going on, like real live drums and bass and all that, and guitar, and them rapping over it at like you'd catch them at like house parties doing that. Apparently, I didn't actually ever see that. I did see them on stage with everybody there.
Yeah,
like in the early days. And then all of a sudden things changed. Like this was a group that was like it was all about these more like they were just having fun, right? It was very playful and jammy. And then all of a sudden it was like Nas came out, and then it was like Nas and Mobb Deep and Biggie and Tupac and so on. And there was a seriousness and a complexity to the delivery, to the subject matter, and even to your like the culture behind your personal story. Who is this rapper? And if you didn't have that, like then nobody wanted to hear you. Like so all of a sudden, like a group like Pharcyde couldn't exist.
You're right. Wow.
And so I was deep into all that. Like I probably listened to more East Coast hip hop than West Coast hip hop, but I listened to it all. That was my probably like 90% of what I listened to.
And then did you have like artist / illustrator?
Yeah, for sure.
Muses?
So in school, I was more, since I was focusing on illustration, it was a lot of like the Mark Ryden kind of world.
Yeah.
It was a little more cartoonish.
Was Juxtapose a big thing in your life?
So yeah, magazines like Juxtapose, galleries like La Luz De Jesus, and
Giant Robot.
Of course, Giant Robot. Yeah.
These are just, I mean, I hate to say old school now, because it makes us old. Yeah. But these were like mainstays back then,
but
man. Like
all that stuff is very like one of the things about the internet is that you can go deep on just about anything. But I feel like the recorded history or the what do you call that? The verbal history, rather, not the recorded history. The verbal history of people that were there and fell in love with these things. Like it's so important to keep that alive because it speaks to the things that are in play now. Everything is cyclical, so like you learn things from movements that have already happened. I was talking to Bobby Hundreds, and who's a friend, and we were talking about how we're hitting an age where like he's got employees that they did this came up because we were talking about the Karate Kid collabo they did, which is a movie that we all loved growing up. Like me in particular, being half Japanese, like this movie was like I was practically looking at my family, and they lived in Encino near where I lived. Like the dude, Mr. Miyagi, looked like my dad. Like it was like very familiar. And and so Bobby did that collabo, and I was like, oh man, that was such a good cool one to do. And he said, obviously a lot of my staff hadn't seen the movie. So when I told them about, like, this is going to be one of the things, I always ask who's seen it and who has not. And then we do a screening at the office.
Yeah.
And he found himself, like, in this position of, like, he felt like, when I was your age, like, let me tell you this story about whatever, and trying to explain, these things, which he has to do pretty regularly about some, the collabos that they do. And I feel weird because I don't ever want to, being on the receiving end of that, I didn't always love that as a kid.
Yeah.
Like when somebody's like, it feels like they're lecturing you. But if it is the type of scenario that Bobby's talking about, where you say, oh, I'm not pushing this information on you, but if you want to know, I'll tell you.
Right.
And oftentimes, they do want to hear it.
Yeah.
They do want to hear you can learn something from it.
But that's exactly who we didn't want to be growing up, which was like, I think I even said to myself, like, when I grow up, I'm not going to be like my dad who says, when I was your age, it wasn't like this. And I find myself saying that now. So it's annoying.
I think it's like you just take a beat to, like, let somebody opt in.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all.
Right.
You can see how all the varied interests that Mike had very likely prepared and built him into the man he would soon become. Not too many people I know can cite inspirations like 9 Inch Nails, Led Zeppelin, then Public Enemy and The Roots, and then Mark Ryden and Juxtapoz magazine. Mike is literally all over the place. And that's probably a good thing. As you'll soon hear, Mike and Linkin Park are about to jettison into stratospheric levels of fame. But at the same time, never really feeling completely comfortable in any one area. Constantly shifting, constantly testing new things. I think this was a prerequisite for the challenges he would soon have to face.
You touched on this a little bit just now, but, like, let's talk a little bit about being Asian. And, like, especially in your world of music where you found success, being an outcast in your culture of, like, so let's say Eminem and hip hop, as in being a minority, right? Yeah. But then also, like, being Asian. So Asians in music back then, like, you could count on one hand, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
The only one I could think of, like, at the time was James E. Ha from Smashing Pumpkins.
Yes,
he was Japanese, and he was a Japanese guy in a band, and he wasn't the center of the band. He wasn't the focus.
The one I think of is Jin, the MC.
And later on, there were, like, these little one-off, like Jin was an example of, like, okay, he's a rapper. Wasn't he signed to Rough Riders?
Yep, for like a day.
Yeah, and he was good.
He was ill.
He was a good rapper, and it was like. He was also out at a time when there were really great rappers.
Yes.
And he never claimed to be as great as them. He just wanted to be in the game.
Yeah, yeah.
But like an Eminem, like if you're that anomaly, you just have to be that much better.
Yeah, right. Did you feel that then? Did you feel like you were a minority? Because I feel like you were a minority in every genre you went into. You were the minority, right?
It's almost comedic how many times I've, like, written a song from that perspective. I, like, look back at it and I'm like, dude, when are you going to get over yourself? Get over it. But I just the other day. So I have a new album out, and I just played. I've only played like 3-4 shows now.
Yeah.
And the first big show that I did a couple weeks ago was an Asian heritage celebration in Los Angeles. I played on the steps of City Hall. It was an amazing show, amazing opportunity. And spoke to a lot of fans there, predominantly, like almost 100% Asian crowd. And they were talking about how, like, how unique it was for them as a fan to, like, grow up on, to see me in a band and say, oh, that guy's like me. Like,
right.
And I know what's weird about it for me is that I'm mixed. So actually everybody thought when I was growing up, people thought I was Mexican. They start speaking Spanish to me, and I'm like, I don't know. But the truth is, like, we did a lot of, culturally, like, we did certain things that are very Japanese American in my house. We celebrated Boys' Day which eventually was Children's Day, and we celebrated. We would go to Obon festivals, you know, they have down in the valley, and we would do New Year's.
Yeah,
I'd see my whole family and eat the traditional foods and stuff. Unfortunately, like my brother speaks Japanese like pretty fluently. I opted for art classes, so I didn't learn Japanese, but definitely it was complicated.
Yeah,
for sure. Being Japanese and like coming into music. I like, here's an example. When we were called Hybrid Theory, Joe and I, being the two artists in the group, we designed a logo for the group that was based on kanji.
Okay.
So Japanese letters. So we took the H and the T and put them into one symbol, and it looked Japanese.
Yeah.
And that's what we liked about it.
Right.
And that was our logo. And when we got signed, and we were talking about, let's put out these, you know, we're going to send press up some like promotional demos to send to fans or whatever. The A&R guy at the label said, you know, I'm just not sure about the logo though, you know. And we were like, why? That logo's dope. And he was basically like, you know, it just looks really like Oriental. And I was like, first of all, he said Oriental. Second of all, I was like, okay, and what's wrong with that? It's like a third of the band is Asian. And he's like, well, you know, it's like, it looks like those like car clubs or like whatever. He's like, you're not like a car club band. And I'm just like, it's like such a weird stereotypical thing to say. Like it had nothing to do with anything. It was just in his mind. He was paranoid about the Asianness of our logo.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Right. And how did you go from Hybrid Theory to Linkin Park? Was that like
it's actually a dumb story.
Okay.
It was like, I'll tell you anyway, but it's like the label, again, in one of those, like, record labels have always had this bad reputation. I think they're probably better now than they've ever been. But back then, it was really, there's some really shady stuff and dumb stuff. And they had convinced us that we can't be called Hybrid Theory because there's another group called Hybrid, and it was going to be confusing for the consumer and blah, blah, blah. The truth is, Hybrid was like a electronic act, and I don't even, they could have been European or something. I don't know. There's no way anyone was going to get confused.
Okay.
But again, the same guy, being that same person at the label, was like paranoid about it, and he basically told us we had to change our name.
Yeah.
Which we hated at first, but then when we found the name Linkin Park, we're like, we actually like that name, so it's cool, it's fine. We'll just call the album Hybrid Theory, and it's all good.
When you went from Zero to Hybrid Theory to Linkin Park, and then you pretty quickly, right, after that hit like massive success, did you, I mean, you probably still to this day remember the days of Zero, and then like, what was that switch like when it was like, holy shit, this is a different thing happening now. Something is like shifting right now.
Well, I mean, the things that I remember, you know, I remember getting free meals and free clothes. That was like a thing. You go, oh wow, like people are sending me all kinds of stuff. That's crazy. They joke that like, as soon as you can afford to buy the cool stuff, people give it to you for free. You know,
and you no longer have to buy it.
Yeah, but that's not entirely true. We actually, well, we can come back to that. But the main thing is, the moments when I really realized it were when we'd be touring with groups and they'd start treating us differently, like either treating us really extra good because they were trying to get on our good side, or they were really jealous and they'd treat us really bad.
Very interesting.
And we'd be on tour with them for like a whole month. It's like, you're going to spend a month with somebody and you're going to start treating them bad? Like, that's a bad look, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, but besides, like a few months later, they're like trying to open for us. They're like, hey, guys, like, it sure was fun touring with you guys back in the day. It's like, no, you guys treated us like shit. Like, we remember that.
Oh, wow. I didn't think that'd be your answer, but that's really interesting.
We didn't like, I guess with a few groups, we kind of like stayed away from it because it was just like we had been, you know, treated pretty bad. But for the most part, I'd say, you know, we had a few tours with different groups where we were first on the bill out of 4 bands, and what we were used to is being like, if there were 4 dressing rooms backstage, the headliner would take all 4, and you'd be in your RV or van or bus.
Okay, I didn't know it worked that way.
Because that's their show. I mean, they take whatever they want to take. And then all of a sudden, we got on this one tour, and I'll say their names because they were actually, you know, you love or hate their music, I'll tell you that at the time it was shocking. And we went out on tour with Papa Roach, who was another nu metal band.
Yeah.
And got there on day one to like load in and like do a sound check, and all of the band was there. They came out and were like saying hello to everybody, and they shook hands with all of us and said, "Welcome to the tour. We're happy to have you. You know, if you have any questions or issues or whatever, like just talk to us. Like,
yeah,
you don't have to, you know."
Wow.
And it was like shocking, right? And it was one of those moments when I went like, "Oh, this is like that's how to be. That's how to if you're going to be at the top of the food chain in any environment, like." Keep the door open, let people know you're happy to see them and glad that they've joined you for, you know, because truth be told, like every band on the bill is bringing people in.
Yeah.
Like we may be bringing 500, you may be bringing 2,000, but it's like but
we're all contributing,
doing something.
Right.
And giving fans a good time. So we kind of took that with, you know, I definitely absorbed that kind of mentality and learned from that.
People often say the same people you see on the way up the ladder are the same people you're going to see on the way down. And Mike alludes to a valuable lesson here that you can choose to embrace or ignore. But this goes way beyond band culture. It's the same for fashion, design, or any business for that matter. The way someone treats another person is the truest sign of their character. I remember early in my career, I had a meeting with a powerful CEO of a massive corporation. He wanted to see my work, and I was so proud and excited to have this meeting. And when I walked into the building, I remember the security guards made me enter through the back because they thought I was making a delivery. Hey, I get that dude was just doing his job, but I will never forget that feeling. Be mindful of how you treat everyone at every step of the journey. You may not remember the feeling, but I guarantee they will.
And then when you became the headline act, did it, I mean, you're a very down-to-earth guy, I got to say, but, like, did it affect you? Like, did you feel like you had to consciously be like, I have to remain down-to-earth? Like, no. I can't turn into...
Oh, I did certain things. Like, I did, in L.A., like, I've never... I still live in L.A. I was born on the Valley side. Actually in Panorama City, which is not too far from like where the Karate Kid, you know, Encino is like not that far, 10 minutes, and then I've moved up and down the Valley side. But as soon as you cross over the hill into Beverly Hills, Palisades, like that's where all the money is, right? And all the fancy houses and all that stuff. And I never moved. I could have moved down there because it's actually closer to a lot of things to managers' offices and labels and all that stuff. And it's like all these nice houses and stuff. But I never wanted to do that because I knew that slowly but surely that culture would affect me. And also like planning on having kids and stuff. Like your kids growing up, the place you decide to raise your kids, like that affects the kind of people they are. Yeah. Whether you like it or not. I mean, it may not be, it probably doesn't completely define them, but it definitely colors their experiences.
Yeah. The environment colors a lot.
Living in like, So, not to say I've completely stayed away from that, but it's at least been I've had an awareness of that for them and for me.
Right. What's like, after you gained the success and became, instead of the opening to the headline, like what's the flossiest thing you ever did? Where you even checked yourself and you're like, that was crazy, Mike. There was a
point where, do you remember Pimp My Ride?
Yeah.
You remember the West Coast Customs
exhibit?
So I had a green, like olive green Range Rover with rims and a system in it that like they literally, that same company pimped.
Okay.
They pimped my ride.
That's kind of modest. I mean, that you got your ride pimped. I mean,
no, but it was like, to me, that was like, I wasn't embarrassed to that for sure. And I also wasn't like, I felt good. Like I felt like that was like a dream car at the moment.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. That's awesome.
We did stuff. I mean, the funny thing is like, we always like, in general in the band, a lot of we put a lot back into the band. Like we would invest a lot of money into our records and like the way, like this will be kind of not what you expect maybe, but giving yourself the environment and the opportunity to make albums in a very relaxed way with all of the gear and possibilities, where it feels like anything I want to do in the studio, I can just do it.
Yeah.
Like that's very, what's the word? It's like a,
it's a luxury, right?
Sure. Yeah, sure. I mean, it's almost like, if I think of it in that way, like our studio experience for a very long time has been very luxurious. Mm-hmm. And that goes with, like, you know, instead of writing your songs at home and getting them ready and then bringing them in to record, we would walk in with nothing and just sit in the studio and create with all of these amazing tools, like, you know, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars of gear. I don't know how much money. I mean, some of those studios spend that much on their gear. So the beautiful thing about that is to be able to go in and record in a studio for, you know, a year in that environment is like, that is expensive. Right. And we would do that because we knew that we were investing in not only our record that we were making, but our education about how to make a record. So I've spent, at this point, I can't imagine how many years I've spent just sitting in a studio. Yeah. Many, many years. Right. Like 10,000 hours thing, like that's like...
You blew that out of the water.
That was like the first year I think we did that.
But I think that's a wise investment. You invested in yourself versus the need to be like buying 3 Lamborghinis.
Yeah, I was never that guy. Yeah. Like that kind of attention doesn't really do anything for me. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it always kind of went back into it. I think it went back into the art and the work.
That's dope. I want to touch on one portion of your career, which is the project that you did with Jay-Z, and how, like, the crossover into, like, you talk about East Coast hip hop and how that was an inspiration for you coming up. Was the concept behind that? Did you birth that concept, or did Jay do it? Like, how did that come to birth?
Yeah, I mean, it came from me.
It came from you. Okay.
So here's what happened. And I remember that we got the message from John Maneely, from Jay's manager, saying, you know, it's basically MTV had decided they wanted to make a series on mashups where they would take 2 dissimilar artists and they put them together. It was basically like at the end of rap rock, they were like, okay, we're going to do these like mashups of bands and rappers, and that'll be a series. We'll do it like every week or every couple weeks. And so they told Jay, would you do our first episode, and who do you want to do it with? And he said Linkin Park. So he was the one that chose us. And they called us and we said, that sounds amazing. Our manager said, how do you want to respond or whatever? We were touring in a bus at the time, and I had a laptop with some recording software on it and an MPC. And Jay had just put out his Black album, acapellas and instrumental. I think, did he just put acapellas out? Whatever it was, I could get his acapellas. And like literally just go get that, which was unusual. So I made 3 of the songs.
On a bus.
In the bus, in like basically a day or 2, I made them. And that was my response. I sent those, and I remember we had exchanged phone numbers, and Jay texted me when he got them. I just looked at my phone and got this text that said, "Oh shit!" Wow, that was it. That was the response. And they all, I mean, everybody flipped over the idea, and we all got on the phone. It was like me and Brad on our side, and then Jay and the managers, and it was basically like we had told them. What I wanted. I told them what I wanted to do. I said, they're going to say, you know, they want to do like these little, you know, mashup episodes. I think we go and we do basically an EP of songs, and we create something that's so good they can't do a series. Like, make the first episode so good big, that it's like the bar's too high. And what nobody really knew is that by asking me to do it, this is the thing that I was better at than almost anything else. Like my favorite thing to do when I was growing up, learning how to produce, learning how to make beats. The way I would make beats is mashing things up. Like I had been mashing stuff up since like the early 90s.
Right.
And my first beats were like I'd sample 9 Inch Nails and Rage Against the Machine and the Jackson 5 and put a Mobb Deep acapella on it, or like a Wu-Tang
Yeah, this is your shit.
That was what I
did. They thought they were getting Linkin Park, but they're actually getting you to do this.
Every weekend, that's what I would do. I would skip. People would have parties. I would go to my house and make stuff with my friends, and we'd rap over it. Maybe they'd just be mashups. Maybe they'd be joke songs.
Yeah.
And then we'd go to the party at like 11:30 when everybody's already hammered, and like drive up, and they'd be like, yo, they come in the car and they listen to the new shit, and I play them the song.
That's sick.
And so that's, when we did the collision course thing, it was just that.
I love that when the question was posed to you, your answer was just, I'm going to work.
It was just music.
Like, you're just like, yeah, I'm not even like, what's my rate? What's my fee? Like, how's this carved out?
I mean, the thing is, like, I'm sure that the legal teams it was maybe the most complicated and the hardest project they had ever assembled.
Yeah.
Because they were dealing with Viacom, Jay-Z's catalog. By the way, the producers on the songs that we used, Kanye, Timbaland, there were samples involved.
Right.
And there was Linkin Park and Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
And then we turned it into an EP and a visual, like an EP and a DVD worldwide. So I can't even begin to imagine what the legal conversations were like on that.
Right.
I know that at the end of it, everybody ended up happy. We basically we tried our best to split everything in ways that everybody got their piece and whatever. Like I didn't feel like strong-armed by Jay's people, and I don't think they felt that way by us, so it was all good. And by the way, we won a Grammy for it, and when we walked up, I expected us to all kind of talk. Well, at least on our side, I expect us all to talk and Jay to talk, and he just pointed at the mic and stepped away. He was just like, no, like,
wow,
go
like
talk.
This is all them.
Yeah, no, because he knew like what I had my
done.
role in doing it, so he just kind of said like, good.
That's dope. But he came up to stage, but he let you do the talking.
Yeah, no, you can. I mean, it's on. You can pull it up on YouTube. He just kind of points at the mic.
But I love that because so many projects that have that scale and potential die on the cutting room floor at stage one because it gets lawyered to death or something.
Yeah,
but it's because you just went out on a whim. It's like, I'm just going to start working on this shit.
And we had the vision. Like I remember, like when it came to the Grammy performance, for example, Brad was the one. Our guitarist Brad was the one who said, this whole mashup thing, as we all knew, came from the Danger Mouse Grey album. So. And the Grey album was where Danger Mouse just having fun. He mashed up Jay's Black album and the Beatles' White album. So the idea was for the Grammy performance, we said that's where this mashup thing started. Let's finish it.
Yeah.
And bring it full circle and include the Beatles. Let's include Paul McCartney. And I was like, wow, that's such a dope idea. We're never going to get Paul McCartney, but that's dope. And management, so he asked management to contact Sir Paul, and he came back immediately and said yes. And we were like...
mind blown.
But that's the thing, is like when the creative leads like that, and you know that you can... It's almost like the what people talk about when they talk about like a good elevator pitch. When it's like, this is my concept. If that concept is short and sweet and you get it and you know it's good, it's much easier to get to the finish line.
Yeah.
When you know it's... When
you painted the picture already.
Yeah, when you believe in the concept. And so he said yes, and everybody else went, whoa, okay. And then like, it was funny because Jay had just retired. And so we were in. Paul McCartney
retired,
was in.
air quotes.
Yeah, Paul McCartney was in.
Yeah.
And then we went to manager and said, okay, so like this is what we're doing. And Jay's manager said, no, Jay's not doing it. And we were like, what?
Nah.
Come on. Like we got Paul.
Right.
We got him. And then he was like, no, Jay's not doing any more performances, any more music. Like he's an executive now and blah, blah. So the idea was so strong that it even convinced them to pull him out of retirement for a moment.
Right.
At the beginning of it. It was probably one of those things where one of the reasons people said, oh, he's not really retiring was because of this performance.
Amazing.
Mike's vision is crystal clear here. And he's right. If you have that set, everything else will fall into place. Sometimes for myself, when I embark at the beginning of a project or collaboration, I actually imagine the headline of the HYPEBEAST post, or what the Instagram photo or caption will look like. And this is without even knowing what we're actually making yet. It's like a trick to set my goals way into the future. And then my job as the lead is to just act on the steps to make that vision come to fruition. But what happens when that vision doesn't quite align with the body of work you've already created? Or maybe you want to keep what you've done in the past pure. Or maybe it doesn't align with the partners that you currently have in place. Whatever the reasons might be, there are times when you might need to consider creating a side project.
I want to go into a little bit about Fort Minor. Okay, so Fort Minor is like your personal side Skunkworks project, I would say, right? I wanted to ask because, like, I see it relating to brands a lot. Like, a lot of like clothing brands have diffusion lines, right? And it's like they have ideas that, for whatever reason, they feel like they can't put into their existing big business, so they create this other thing.
How do you define a diffusion brand?
Diffusion could be up or down, but just a different. I've defined the parameters of this brand A so well that these other ideas don't fit into that parameter anymore. Okay. Is that why Fort Minor was born?
Yeah, it's same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Because Linkin Park, it wasn't just that Linkin Park was so well defined. Fort Minor came after the first two Linkin Park albums, which were basically the same aesthetic. And then we did the Collision Course thing with Jay, and we also did a remix album called Reanimation, which was much more electronic and hip hop. But I never felt like with any of those projects, Collision Course included, I didn't feel like any of those were me doing hip hop, like where I came from. So I wanted to kind of play around with some stuff that was just digging back into my hip hop roots, but approaching it with my newfound knowledge of like how to make a song and how to record. Like I was a much better producer and a much better engineer than I was when I started. So I wanted to go back to that and see what I would make. And it was really, I started for fun. Yeah. And then it just became a record.
But with Linkin Park, the way I see it is almost like you have partners. You have like, right, and you have to have discussions with your partners. Yeah. Did you try to discuss these Fort Minor ideas with them, and they were like, not us?
No, because
you didn't even broach it?
No, I didn't. I didn't even go to them with it because I knew what it like. If I knew that they would be so convincing in a way, like that if I started talking to them about it, that the songs would get changed a lot.
Even for like you personally, like their opinion of it would change. Yeah, you. Holy shit, that's mind blowing to me.
It's a very.
What sign are you?
You have to be very.
What sign are you?
What sign am I? Aquarius.
Oh, okay, that's why.
That's why.
I think if you were a Leo, it wouldn't matter. No, I feel the same as you, man. Like I will hold ideas to myself because I know just by exposing them, they'll change the idea. Just hearing other people's thoughts on them. Well, you got
it. Like if you know you're susceptible to. Like I'm a good collaborator. Like I like to collaborate. Yeah. So there are times when I have an idea that I feel like it's a pure idea that I know that if I start opening the door to other people, that the idea will change. And I have to think before I have the conversations. I have to check myself and say, do you want to keep this idea the way it is, or do you want to change it? Because if I don't want to change it, then I just don't start the conversation. It's like that's how Fort Minor happened. That's actually my new album, the solo album I just put out this week. It's the same thing where I just knew in both cases that I had a complete vision and I didn't want any other I didn't want any other input.
Okay, so then the other side of that coin, did you have to sit down and tell the fellas, guys, I'm doing my own thing with this?
Yeah. That was it was a little tricky, but at the same time, you know, we had been through we had a really long run on the road and with all the music we had put out, and the guys wanted to take a break. Okay. And I'm more
keep working.
I'm more I work I love to work and I keep making stuff anyway, even if I'm off. So my attitude was like, well, like I'm gonna make this stuff anyway. It was I'm making it for fun, and then it became a thing, and it was like, well, the guys are gonna be, you know, what is this going to put them off the road for an extra, 6 to 9 months? Like probably not a big deal.
Right.
So I just let them know that way. That's kind of what I was thinking. And it ended up being like I remember them being supportive. Cool. So yeah, they were cool.
It's great to hear how Mike was protective of his new ideas not wanting to share too much too early for fear of influencing himself in a way he knows he didn't want to. But at the same time, he knew he had partners in both music and business, and transparency is paramount to keeping the sanctity of Linkin Park. Finding that balance was the key in allowing him to explore these different paths. So, we're about to start talking about Mike's new album, Post Traumatic. And unfortunately, we can't do that without discussing the sensitive topic of Chester Bennington's suicide. Now, if you don't want to hear this subject matter, you might want to skip to the end of this episode. We're going to have links and phone numbers there for places you can reach out to get help and just talk to someone. Between Chester, Kate Spade, Anthony Bourdain, and others, this topic might be a lot for some to handle right now. So yeah, here we go.
And now you've got your new solo album.
Yeah.
Right.
Which it kind of, like I said, similarly, I had an idea for it, and it was pretty clear.
Right. I mean, you went through something really traumatic, and then did you feel like right after that happened, you had to express it creatively?
Yeah, I did. Well, so let me explain it like this. So for me, I built something with a group of guys that because it was so big and so many people associated me with it and it with me, that it was enmeshed.
Yeah.
Right? So like when you think of Linkin Park, you think of me. When you think of me, you think of Linkin Park. That's, I think it's not what I set out to do in the beginning. I don't know if I had an idea of what, any of that stuff, but it's what ended up happening. And I, for better or worse, it was just true. And then when I made things, when I made songs, when I made art, paintings or whatever contributed to the, I oversaw, like, for example, the merchandise and the web and the packaging.
Yeah.
Sometimes with Joe. I say oftentimes with Joe, sometimes without. And then a year ago, Chester passed away. And it was like everything came into question all of a sudden. It's like, okay, we built this thing together, and just to use a really simple example of what has occurred, like I can't just go out and play the song Numb on stage or One Step Closer. Yeah. Right? Because if you have somebody else sing it, it's not the same. It just doesn't, to me. And we did that. We had a tribute show with all these wonderful artists that came out and, sang his parts, and we did a 3-hour performance at the Hollywood Bowl for the fans. And afterwards I thought about it, and I was like, listening to even as we were rehearsing it, it's just nobody as good as all those artists were. They weren't Chester. So I was having this feeling of like, okay, so am I not allowed to do that anymore now? Yeah. Like, is Linkin Park done? And so therefore, am I done?
Oh, wow.
It's hard, because, and for me, being able to, like, I knew that it was just a self-doubt. And it was a moment of self-doubt. I shouldn't say moment, because it was like on and off for like maybe months. But I made stuff anyway, because I've always, like, whenever I've been dealing with things that are heavy or difficult, I'm always making art. Yeah. And it helps me, like, it's therapeutic. It's also kind of meditative. Yeah. It might be painting, but it might be like just playing, instrumental music, for example. So
you were making stuff.
So I was making stuff, and eventually, like, some of those things turned into songs about what was going on. And
did you feel obliged to the fans? Because not only was Linkin Park this thing you built, but now there's this following which is massive. Did you feel like you owed something? Like, was this your response? Besides, like, a press release, you wanted, like, something more of, like, an emotional response.
I didn't feel that. To me, that feels like there was a like an obligation, or like almost like if you didn't do it, you'd feel guilty. Like, I wouldn't have felt guilty
if you didn't put anything out.
No, I wouldn't have felt guilty, but I felt like our relationship with the fans is it's not a fan artist. I mean, it's more than a fan artist relationship. Like it's more cultural.
Yeah.
Like you could see it on full, like a lot of people don't know that about our relationship with the fans. And it was on full display after Chester passed away. Like there were tributes all over the world just imagine how many countries we played.
Yeah.
Like it was, fans getting together. Some of them had their own concerts and sang all the songs.
That's amazing.
Raised
Your
money.
fans are almost more like Apple fans, right?
It's like that. Yeah.
It's like religious.
It's a little bit maybe, but the difference. Well, I'd say maybe, and the thing that I noticed about them after that is that they were reaching out to one another. That it was like they were going through something difficult, and they didn't just need closure. They needed they needed to be consoled. They needed camaraderie and like community. And some of them needed some of that more than others, because, when you talk about, whenever it borders on or addresses suicide, that information is like a landmine for some people. Like it sits inside of a conversation, and once it happens, like they can't like undo it, and if that triggers somebody, then it can be really hard.
Yeah.
So for those fans, a lot of us had to get educated on their behalf, like had to get educated about how to talk about it and how to be sensitive to them. And now, when other artists have passed away, when other people, just recently Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, like I got called to do an interview about this same subject came up again, and I'm in a better position now to talk about it than I was a year ago, because I've
learned so much.
I've been thrown into this subject, and it's. The bottom line is there are so many people. We've got more influencers now than we've ever had in the history of the planet. It's diffused. Like your average kid living with their parents, one minute they have 50 followers, and the next minute they've got 5,000, and then you blink and they could have 250,000, right? Like they don't think of themselves. They think of themselves as popular, but they don't think of themselves as responsible or like an influencer in that way.
Yeah.
And they're going to need to start, because if they talk about something as tricky as suicide, look what happened to Logan Paul. Like he didn't know he was. I'm going to be very generous and say uneducated on the subject. Yeah. And people let him know, as they should.
Right.
Right. So that's the thing about, the connections that we've got.
The thing you said about suicide almost being like a landmine, like it gave me the chills, because it is one thing. It's like if someone dies of cancer or like it's very sad, but suicide is really like, I almost equate it like to a zombie film where like, you got bit, and now like you heard about it, you got bit, and now it's like, do I have that in me? And then once you start thinking about it, it starts perpetuating. Yeah. And then you get like,
The good news is for people that have that, it's like it's a visualization thing. It's like a trigger. And the good news is, unlike the zombie film, that you're not doomed. Like you can work your way out of it again. But it does take work, and it does take, like we talk about now, I've learned to talk about mental health as a thing that is, we should just, in the simplest form, we should think about mental health the way we think about physical health. So if you wake up in the morning and your back hurts, you may decide, it hurts a little bit, I'm going to take it easy. You may say, it hurts a lot, I'm going to take an Advil or take some medication. Yeah. Or one level higher, I got to go to a doctor. Right. I have to go see a professional.
And no one does that for mental health right now.
They don't do that for mental health usually. And people walk around just ignorant of their own mental health status when they could be checking in and saying, okay, I should take it easy, or I should get medication, or I should see a doctor. Like those are different levels of pain, right? Yeah. And we do have that mental pain, and we should go through those processes if that's what we need to get better.
Yeah, I just heard a David Chang podcast talking about Bourdain, and he said, like, it's so common to call into work and be like, yo, I can't come in, I feel like crap today, like my back hurts, like you said. Yeah. But if you call into work and say, like, I can't come in because of my mental issue, that's a huge stigma that no one wants to bring up. That's like, oh, you're weird.
Yeah.
You know, and
well,
it's
also
not right.
they conflate it, they mistake it for like just being crazy.
Yeah.
They lump it in with like, oh, you're unfit.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's not true. Mm-hmm. That's not true. Like especially if you're dealing, and I realize that from an employer's point of view, like it's a very fuzzy kind of excuse, right? Oh, I can't see.
You can't see it.
I can't see it. And by the way, if the reason they're depressed is because of a very personal issue, mm-hmm. then they can't tell you. So now all of a sudden you're being told, like, you got to just trust me. It. Yeah. Trust me, I'm in trouble.
Right.
Like that's hard. Yeah. That would be hard for an employer, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay, so this last part I think is something that I definitely wanted to bring up, because I view what we do sometimes in life as like a rat race. Right, and you enter this rat race and you try to figure out your ways to success and fame and notoriety and financial success and respect. And what's been happening since Chester, and even, you know, you could even say like Amy Winehouse before that, and now Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain. When Anthony Bourdain, when that happened, because that dude to me was like living the life. Like there was not financial success, but there was no more making it than his life.
Yeah.
It begged the question. And I want your take on this, because I think you've in many ways completed the rat race. Like you've at least gotten to the point where you've seen the other side of the rainbow and you've seen massive success. What is it about exiting that rat race that fucks up some people so hard? I mean, even like Kanye right now is like, he's openly struggling with, like, what is it? What's happened? What is it on the other side? Tell us.
I don't know. For me, I mean, there are no definitive answers for people, right? But one thing that's always helped me with perspective on success is the moment I had to realize that success was more subtle, could be in the more subtle things than you thought. So, you know, when you're young, you think about money and you know, maybe some people get into music for money, cars, girls, whatever, mm-hmm. right? Just fame, just being famous.
Yep.
And my number one focus above those things the whole time was making great music, like mm-hmm. making stuff that I felt was great. And other people could talk shit about it or do whatever they're going to do. But when I listened to it and I listened to something else that I thought was great, I could at least go, I'm getting closer, I'm getting better.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm certainly not bad at this.
You were concerned with the product. That's it. Your product.
Well, I wanted stuff to be great.
Yeah.
And so then if whether you make the money or you don't make the money, like, okay, well, I stood behind the product first mm-hmm. and foremost. And mm-hmm. we made an album called 1,000 Suns, which was a concept record. It was very hard for people to digest. It was a polarizing record. We put it out, and before we even put it out, we had massive fights with the label about it because it wasn't commercial enough. Yeah. And it got either 1 star or 5 stars uh-huh. on everywhere it was reviewed.
Right.
Because there were people that said, wow, this is art, this is beautiful. And other people said, wow, this is not hybrid theory, fuck you guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. So, and in order to put yourself in that position, you have to say, like, what are my goals? Mm-hmm. And am I achieving them before anyone else even sees it or hears it?
Yeah.
Am I achieving my goals without any other input?
Mm-hmm.
And we felt we were. So we put it out. And then it didn't matter how many people said bad things. We already knew that we were achieving our goals. Moving even further along in life, those goals can be even more subtle. They can be, you know, balancing work and family life. They mm-hmm. can be making sure that you feel, some people prioritize like an inner peace.
Yeah.
So that you're not constantly, there's not that noise of like competitive nature and the world outside and the news feed and the whatever is going on. Like, to be able to say, like, I went my entire day and I wasn't really fazed by all that stuff. Like, that's a good day.
You're at that point.
That's a big, I'm getting there. Yeah.
It's still a struggle though. Like, you still have to mute like deliberately mute things out.
I mean, you work out, right? Like if you work out, like some days you come in and you're like, I feel great.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go. And other days you go, man, that workout was kind of weak.
Yeah.
I feel bad.
Yeah. Okay.
But you're going to come back the next day and you're going to, you don't feel like, my workout is ruined forever.
Yeah.
I'm just bad at this now. I quit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like with some people, like they feel like they got to a point where they achieved so much and they go, I don't have anything. Like, what else is there? It's all downhill now, and that's sad.
Right.
I think for me, it's always been like, if you can, when you hit one goalpost, you got to look for the next one.
Yeah.
And look for it in a very like honest way.
Right. What do you think?
This is really honest advice from someone who has seen a lot firsthand. And quite truly, someone who is still learning each and every day. And because he's up there in that upper echelon, I wanted to ask for his viewpoint on someone we see every day in the hypebeast community. Someone who is figuring out his mental state in full view for all of us to see. Let's hear what Mike has to say about Kanye West.
What do you think? 'Cause I think with Kanye is very interesting because I feel like we're seeing it. We're seeing him process it real time.
Yeah. Well, so he's in a situation, and I've met him. I won't pretend to know him. But he's in a situation where he has placed a lot of emphasis on a lot of things that are not in his control. And when you do that, you are affected heavily by those things. So if for example, if chart success is emphasized, you can't control that. You can make the best shit you want to make, but if people don't like it, that you literally can't control people into liking your stuff.
Yeah.
You can't control them into buying your product or whatever.
I see what you mean.
You also like and also if you're in an environment of chaos where you've made in his case your brand is associated with a lot of other things. It's associated with Kim's family. It's associated with these designers over here and Adidas and so on and so forth. That's a lot of chaos.
Yeah.
That's a lot of stuff out of your control. And if any one of those things like reflects badly or on you or requires a response, then all of a sudden you're being pulled in those directions. I think that's very chaotic.
Right. I would say if Kanye was in the room, he would say, I control all this stuff.
Not true. No way.
Wow.
I think that's very like anybody who thinks they are, I think they're kidding themselves. Because that's just going to fall apart. That's a house of cards.
Yeah.
But to me, the other part of it is that he's genuinely talented. He's genuinely, one of the best producers alive.
Yeah.
And when that's hovering over your head, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And he's created this culture of
chaos, right?
Well, it's not just the chaos though. It's I am a god. I am the best. I am whatever. Of confidence. Culture. It's like a culture of confidence when that's not humanly possible to be that confident every day. And I think to me, the bipolar thing that he's talking about and the moments of like weakness that you see him just kind of spaz.
Yeah.
Like I think that's when his confidence it gets shook and he
cracks a little.
And he knows like, okay, you're a human being, dude. There's a real human in there going like, I can't be a robot.
Right.
You can't just say, hey, make me greatness right now.
Yeah.
If you listen to his music, that takes a lot of craft to create those. So he didn't just give you every demo he made.
Yeah.
He made a lot of stuff to get to the albums that he puts out.
Yeah. I think he needs to move to your side of the hills.
Maybe so. Maybe so. I don't. And that's the thing. I feel bad for him, and I don't feel bad for him. Like
Yeah, because he made the bed that he's sleeping in now. Yeah.
I do. I will say too. The other weird thing though is I don't think that's the best influence on some of the young people though. I think he has a lot of
responsibility, right?
Worshippers.
Yeah.
a lot of people who just hang on every word and do everything like he does it. And, you know, I mean, he's allowed to do certain things he does because he's earned those things, right?
Yeah.
And I see young people doing things that he does, and it's like they haven't earned any of that.
Right.
Like, you haven't proven anything. You're not him. Like, you can't act that way to people. You can't say those things to people.
Right.
And I don't know.
It's awesome getting your perspective because you have the ability to live in that atmosphere that he's in that air. You know what I mean? Like, you have felt that sort of like, you know, your face on a Jumbotron. So like you understand how that feels, you know? Yeah. And it's nice to see that it doesn't have to be that way. Like, there's a way that you can mute that stuff and really like live like a normal human being.
Well, I like to go to the movies and grocery store. Right. You know what I mean? Like, we worked hard to diffuse the amount of attention on our individual faces as a band. Like, everybody, when we were in 2001, 2, 3, when it was the hottest it could be for us, we literally had the best-selling album on the planet, and then the follow-up was almost as big. It was a crazy time, and when they would always ask for just Chester on the cover or just me on the cover of the magazine, and we say no, either put both of us or put all 6 of us. That's what you get. Right. And every chance we got, we put all 6 of us in front because it diffused the attention. Like, you just knew Linkin Park as a band. Yeah. You didn't know my face as much. And so I could go to a grocery store. I could go see a movie and it would be okay. I wouldn't really get stopped that much. Right.
So you touched on this before, and just to wind up now, what is the future now, man? Like,
well, yeah, I'm still figuring that out. Okay. And it is very, it's a heavy subject. But the nice thing for me, I feel good about my skill set. So I feel confident that I can make good stuff that I like and that some fans will like. I also know that there are a lot of people that are hurting who are our fans and not our fans, who have gone through some stuff in their life, right? Yeah. And I know that having gone through really horrible stuff this year, and questioned everything, that if I can channel the honesty of what I've been through into the music and into the performances, then it'll be helpful for somebody. I've been doing meet and greets before my shows and talking to a lot of the fans and hearing stories that I've never heard before. Like at other, it's a whole different kind of relationship. Yeah. Where people are coming up and saying, like, talking about their brother, like worse than I can even imagine. My twin brother, died by suicide and stuff like that. Yeah. Like, where you just go, oh my God, I can't even begin to imagine what that's like. Right. And then they say, and your record's helping me. Like, it makes me feel like I can do this. Like, just seeing you up there on stage. And that's like, just yesterday I did a signing here in town, and those were kind of
when
stories.
You hear that, you can't stop.
No, man, that's like, it's an amazing and beautiful thing. And I know that it's also, I can't put myself in the position of saving people. I can't, because I that's for them to do. Right. I can just do my best to, like, live my story and my thing, and hope that they connect with it and that it inspires them to, hang on as long as possible to be around for a really long time. Yes. Or just go get some help and take care of themselves.
Yeah. All right, man. Thank you for your time. That was dope.
Hey, thanks for listening to the episode with Mike Shinoda of Linkin Park. If you need someone to talk to, if you're sad, depressed, or just can't figure stuff out, call 1-800-273-8255. Or you can visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Seriously, people out there can help you. And if they can't, I know for a fact you can help yourself. You just need to give yourself the time. Thanks for listening to the first episode of Season 2. You can find out more about the show or listen to other episodes at hypebeast.com/radio. Please subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts. I personally use Overcast. And leave us a comment. Tell me what you think of the show. And if you can condense your words and opinions into 280 characters or less, you can reach out to me on Twitter. I'm @JeffStaple. Check us out on the web at businessofhype.com, and you can email any questions you might have to questions@businessofhype.com. The Business of Hype is directed by Daniel Navetta. It's been edited and produced by Bright Young Things. You can check them out at byt.nyc. It's been engineered by Patrick Morris, and our intern is Carolyn Cow. This was recorded at Sibling Rivalry Studio and on location in my office in New York City. I'm Jeff Staple, and you've been listening to The Business of Hype on Hypebeast Radio.